Hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of Wraeclastonomics with Nerdstalgic. So, big news is tomorrow there's going to be a patch coming into the game with a few interesting things to note for people who delve into the economics of Wraeclast. Now, things to keep in mind during this broadcast are going to be that everything that I talk about is basically going to be warbands related. I am not really a Tempest player. I have dabbled in Tempest some, mainly just for challenge credit, but it's not really where I focus my attention at the moment. So all of this, all of these things that I'm going to postulate and prices that I relay to you are going to be with the mindset of a warbands player. So if you're a Tempest player and you're listening to this, take some of these things with a grain of salt. Add your own knowledge to what I say. So, before we actually get into, currency prices and rates and such, I want to talk about these patch notes this patch that's going to come out tomorrow. So, the big biggie that everyone's really excited about is the quadrupling of the drop rates of rare and super rare uniques. And what that basically means is that within the uniques in Path of Exile, there are 4 different tiers, and the top 2 tiers are known as rare and super rare. Now, to give you an idea of some of the items that are within those tiers, just kind of a guess of a list at some of the items that you might find in the super rare would be things like Shavs or a Mjolnir or a Wind Ripper, things like that. Drill Neck is thought to be T1. Some of the ones that are rare are things like Rat's Nest, Antivarius, Belly of the Beast, Voltaxic Rift, Consuming Dark, Divinarius, Iachula, so things like that. A lot of people are kind of abuzz about this. There's a lot of excitement. Sure, I mean, because everybody wants to get one of those uniques so that they can, either use it in a build or sell it, because more money is better, right? Some people are complaining and saying that, I feel sorry for the people that already have those items. But here's the thing. You've got to look at it this way, okay? Think about how rare these are to find at the moment. Sure, T2 is not as rare as T1, and we don't exactly know the drop rates, but when you multiply a very, very small number by 4, the result is still a very small number. So, when I'm thinking about what effect this will have upon the economy, yes, there are many players who are going to play. This could spark some more excitement and bring some players back into the mix, which could in turn get more people playing, more items dropping, which could in theory cause there to be instead of it being like a proportional rise in the amount of these things on the market, it could be a little bit more exponential because of maybe a rise in players. Do I see the price on some of these going down? Not necessarily. In fact, if the latter happens and we see a spike in players, which I don't know that we will, simply because of Diablo 3 releasing their new patch last week, I'm sure that took away some of our player base, and that's fine. If a lot more players end up coming back, this could make people feel like they have the ability to finally get into an in-game build. So it could actually end up with more people wanting these items. It's a possibility, but in my mind, when I think about this, I think this will have extremely low amount of impact on the prices of, say, the T1. The super rare uniques, I just don't see it really happening. As far as the T2, there's where we might actually see a little bit of a dip in price, because those things are a little bit less rare already. So especially for some of these T2 uniques that don't see a whole lot of play or aren't as heavily demanded as some of the other ones. Say like a Rat's Nest. Rat's Nest is used in quite a few builds this league, so I anticipate that it's going to hold price fairly well. However, you know, looking down through this list, something like a Bringer of Rain, you might even see the price go down a little bit more. Now, this could all change if somebody breaks a build. If somebody ends up coming up with a new build that uses one of these items, you can pretty much guarantee that the price is going to shoot up within a matter of days. I've seen it happen before. So that's kind of my 2 cents on the whole additional drop rate to the T1 and T2 uniques. And I kind of wonder, looking at the whole scope of this patch, if this isn't so much about making the T1 and the T2 rares more accessible as it is maybe making those unique drops from the warbands more accessible. Because if you look at the whole patch, we've got a buff to divination cards, which I'm going to talk more about here in a minute. We've got a buff to the drop rate of the rarer uniques. And let's see. Let me bring back up my notes here. Yeah, that's the main gist of this patch, and both of those are a big part of getting 8 out of 8. Wanting to get 8 out of 8 is getting divination cards and getting the identification on those uniques. And speaking as somebody who is actually, you know, kind of chasing after the 8 out of 8s, not too hardcore, I can definitely tell you that getting those uniques from those warbands is a pain in the ass. I've ran a lot of maps, I've chased a lot of 4 dots, and guess what? I've seen a grand total of one warband unique. I haven't seen any of the other ones, not even any of the lower level ones. So yeah, so that might be more what this is about. Since GGG knows that the people who are hardcore into getting, you know, the top 50 8 out of 8 have already done it, this could be like a stealth nerf to the challenge of actually completing your 8 out of 8. So let's talk about divination cards. So basically what GGG said is that many divination cards have been made more common. While they're still not a trivial shortcut to wealth acquisition, we now have the data we need to raise their drop rates in a safe way. They should be a lot more farmable now. So this is where I see potentially some fluctuation on price. But again, you have to look at it from the other side too. This change could also spur people who were out of the divination card market into the divination card market with the mindset of, well, now that they are more farmable, now that they're cheaper, I'll actually try to complete that challenge. So overall, I do think the price of divination cards, some of them will drop down. I'm just not sure exactly how much that's really going to affect it. I think we're going to have to sit back and wait and see. I think the ones that are really common are going to be dirt cheap. You know which ones I'm talking about, like Lover and Carrion Crow. Things like that are going to be dirt cheap. But I think that the high-end divination cards are still going to be fetching a lot of money, like Brittle Emperor and the Doctor and things like that, because they're still going to be super rare. I mean, it does say many have been made more common. I'm sure that there are some that they did not make more common. Okay, so yeah, it says uniques from old leagues are the exception to the above change. So basically that relates more to the quadrupling of the rare and super rare uniques. What that basically means is when you are going after trying to chance a Headhunters or a Evol's Devotion, you're not going to have a higher drop rate for that, or a higher chance rate, I guess you'd say, for that. Other things of note, small note, is there are 4 uniques that are going to be adjusted down in rarity tier. Specifically, the ones that jumped out at me were Gold Rim and Brightbeak. Gold Rim was kind of a head scratcher for a lot of us. Seeing Gold Rim Helm being sold for, being sold for anywhere between 30C to 40C was pretty interesting at the start of the league. So now Gold Rim and Brightbeak, which are both fine leveling items, are being readjusted back to where they were before 2.0. So hooray, we'll be getting a lot of those again. And the last note I have for you guys is that tomorrow is the start of the new race season. So Blood Grip, if you don't know what Blood Grip is, it's a very simple mechanic basically. It's just one thing. Players will now have the buff Corrupting Blood. So that means when a monster hits you, they will get stacks of Corrupting Blood. So could be interesting. Could make defensive strategies a bit more viable for racing. I don't know. I'm not really a good racer. I just started last season, so I'm not really sure how this is going to affect the season, but I'm pretty hyped for it. Got some interesting rewards for this race. The 10-point reward is a Bloodthorn, but the art looks pretty cool. The 40-point reward is a Crimson Jewel, a white Crimson Jewel. Now, the thing to remember is that these are item level 100, normally these whites, but I don't know that that will necessarily affect the jewel, the properties that can roll in the jewel. We'll see. Could affect it in the future, I suppose. The level 100 prize is actually pretty good. It's a Death Rush Amethyst ring. So that ring is not necessarily easy to get. I mean, it's not super expensive, but that's a pretty solid reward for 100 points. And then the 250 reward is actually kind of meh. It's Blood Dance Shark Skin Boots. Blood Dance aren't really super, have never been super rare. They have seen a spike in use this league just because of the meta. But still, as a 250-point reward, I'm a bit meh about the Blood Dance. The 500-point reward is Shadows and Dust class mitts, which is actually a pretty damn good reward. The Shadows and Dust class mitts, for those of you who don't know, were a Rampage-specific unique. And they're pretty good. They're pretty good. And then the 1,000-point reward is a Coral Amulet Blood Grip. It is the namesake of the season, and it says 3 life regenerated per second. It adds physical damage to attacks, 10 to 20, which is pretty good. 64 to maximum life, that's decent. 9 life regenerated per second, that's quite a lot, actually. 100% increased life recovery from flasks, which is good. And then moving while bleeding doesn't cause you to take extra damage. So in some ways, it basically just kind of shits all over like puncture. So I don't know. A lot of people are kind of mad about these rewards, but I think that's kind of a common theme. For every race season, people just seem to really just kind of poo-poo on the rewards and always moan and groan. But you know what? They still end up racing. So my personal goal is just going to be to get to the Death Rush. So, and that will be enough for me. Okay, so let's talk about some prices to close out this video. So there's going to be a little bit of a change. For most of these currencies, I'm actually not going to be pricing them in Chaos anymore, and here's why. Chaos is overinflated. It's overinflated, and I don't recommend people do business in Chaos anymore. And a lot of this stems back to a video I saw by Project PT. And, at first I kind of disagreed with some of his points, but the more I thought about it, the more I agreed with it. And I have pretty much switched on warbands away from Chaos. And I'm just accepting Fuse for my transactions. So, therefore, the prices that I give are going to be either in terms of Fuse, in terms of Exalt, and there are going to be some in terms of Chaos, but they're going to be ones that are very, low-level currencies where it just doesn't make a whole lot of sense to price it in Fuse. So scrolls are pretty standard at 160 for 1C. I suppose you could always just say 160 for 2 Fuse, but whatever. Transmutes 40 for 1C. Augmentations $64 for 1C or $32 for a fuse is the price that I'm going to quote. And basically what that price is, that is the vendor recipe price. So if you can get them cheaper than that, then buy them, but don't sell them any cheaper than that. Whetstones, 20 for 1C. Armors, 40 for 1C. Glassblowers, baubles, you know, there's just not a lot of trading on those. I know I did see a price that was like 4 for 1C, but just don't see a lot of activity, which means that like the price of them, depending on who's buying, can be either really good or just absolutely dog shit poor. So I would just recommend, if you have baubles, just keep them, because you'll need them for rolling your flasks. Okay, Chrome. I do have in Chaos, 18 to 1 Chaos. The thing about Chrome is that the price on them has stayed pretty, I guess you'd say the rate has stayed pretty high on them in terms of like what you can get for a Chaos. You know, in previous leagues, Chrome has seen a lot better value for the Chrome. And like if you're wanting to buy an Exalt worth of Chrome, you're just going to get a boatload basically. The person's going to have to load up their Chrome into a dump truck, bring it up to your house, and like dump it into your living room. So somewhere in the neighborhood of over 1,000 easily Chrome, maybe even 1,100 for an X. Alterations, a very common rate is kind of around 900 for an X. Jewelers, it's around 440 for an X. Chance orbs, about 350 for an X. Keep in mind, there's some narrow bands around those prices. You might see people buying or selling for more or less than that. Chisels, about 150 per X. Fuse, 130 for an X. An Alks, 150 for an X, but I have seen people selling Alks as high as 180 for an X. So I was like, wow. Scours, 90 to 100 per X. Blessed, I would just say 1 for 1 fuse. Veil orbs, 45 for an X. Regrets, 50 for an X. Regal, 40 for an X. Not seeing a whole lot of Regal sellers at that price. I'm seeing most of them are flippers, and they're selling it like lower than that, but like it doesn't make any sense for Regal to be 30 for an X. That just absolutely doesn't make any sense whatsoever. So at least in my opinion, it makes no sense. So I'm gonna say it should be closer to 40 for an X. We'll see. Exalts themselves are trading in Chaos at about around 75C, maybe even higher. I have seen people buying at 80. So just if you're wanting to actually get some Chaos, you're wanting to sell an Exalt, I would just sit in trade chat for a while and see what's happening. Or also 130 fuse, which I'd already mentioned. GCPs are going about 30 per X, which I think is a pretty fair rate, really. Divines 4 per X, and then Mirror, you know, I saw one for sale at 50X, and I saw another one for sale at 75X. So I've only seen 2. Now, granted, I don't just sit in trade chat 24/7. I just make pit stops there to kind of buy and sell as I need in terms of currency. I never sell items there, but anyways, this video's ran on a little bit long, but I wanted to talk about some of the patch notes. I wanted to give my thoughts on it, and of course, I wanted to give you some currency rates. So, if you have anything you want to talk about, if you have any ideas for what you'd like to see this show, Wraeclastonomics, become, if you have any questions, comments, cries of anguish, concerns, please leave me a comment under the video. You can also contact me in-game. Just look for Nerdstalgic, and I will be more than happy to discuss anything with you whatsoever, even the price of tea in China. So, until next time, game on.